Hello and welcome to this TCC group webinar where we will talk about the recent consultation announcement by the FCA on the Motor Finance Redress scheme. My name is Gary Evans. I am the Chief Product Officer and Chief Commercial Officer for TCC Group, which includes Momenta, TCC and Recordsure. I'm joined today by my colleague Mike Morris, who's the Head of Operations at Momenta UK and has delivered countless remediation and redress programmes, and has also been patiently preparing for the FCA to include its decisions on how to deal with these motor finance redress schemes for more than 18 months. As always, before we start, just a couple of housekeeping rules. The Q&A functionality on Zoom is available to everybody. Please do feel free as we progress throughout the webinar to use it if you have any questions. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer them, but if not, as always, we will follow up with an email shortly afterwards and answer every question that we've been put to. Also, as usual, we're going to be running some anonymous polls throughout this webinar. We're really keen to get your views on the FCA's announcement and your preparedness for what comes next. But I want to reassure you there's no way for us to attribute any answers to you individually or your organisation, so these polls truly are anonymous. You're surprised how many people don't really want to put answers forth if they are able to be attributed. Now, the purpose of this webinar is to revisit what's been said and then provide the TCC Momenta Recordsure house view on what creditors should be doing now ahead of the final announcement in January, February time. And before I bring Mike in with his insight and opinion on the consultation announcement, I want to start with a very straightforward poll to gauge how the FCA's proposed definition of the redress scheme aligned with your expectations. So if you can get your mouses ready and click on the option that best matches your views. Diane? Oh, super quick. So I'll give you 30 seconds to have a little think. I think that should have given everybody enough time to make their decision on that one. So if we can get the answer up, Diane. Well, that's a mix. I must admit, so with a few tweaks, maybe to time frame and redress calculation methodology, it pretty much came out where we expected it to. And I know everyone from legal firms to Martin Lewis has provided an overview of what the FCA actually said, but it still feels like something that's worthwhile. So Mike, would you mind running through the headlines of what happened a couple of days ago?
Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. Good morning, everybody. So from our view, reading it, I feel like the FCA announcement has provided some real clarity. There obviously will be minor points to raise questions to in the coming weeks. But overall, in terms of the operationalisation, how it's going to be executed, it provided some real detail, which we've all been waiting for. I think there's been very clear definitions of scope, timelines, which should really help companies start with some of the implementation planning. Let's go through some of the main headlines of that. Date range. So this is it has been confirmed it's going back to 2007. We know this is an area that was being challenged and is going to be quite complex to be able to execute due to the availability of the data. But that's the FCA paper takes the view that firms will need to consider everything back to 2007, and a lack of data essentially isn't a defence of the sale at that point. In terms of criteria, in terms of what's in scope, so all DCAs, which is kind of as we expected. Scenarios where there's a high commission arrangement, 35% of the cost of the credit and 10% of the loan, potentially more likely to affect some non-DCA agreements. And any agreement where there's a contractual tie between the lender and a broker, which gave exclusive rights to provide the credit. So again, three quite straightforward criteria, and all can be defended with sufficient disclosure was made at the point of sale, or if in the circumstance of DCAs, the broker did choose the lowest available rate. But I think those scenarios are likely to be few and far between based on some of the data provided in the FCA paper. In terms of Timelines: the consultation closes on the 18th of November and likely to commence the scheme in early 2026. Some of the real detail is in around timelines of how to deal with complainants and people that are deemed in scope. So from the start of the scheme date, existing complainants will need to be contacted within 3 months and will be given the option to opt out. They'll have a month to decide whether to opt out, which it's quite a short time frame to be able to go out and contact. In some firms' circumstances, is quite a large customer base that have already complained. All other customers that are then determined to be in scope need to be contacted within 6 months. And if people, if those who don't receive contact within 12 months don't complain, they'll be considered out of scope for the scheme. And the FCA has mentioned they're going to carry out significant advertising campaign to raise awareness. And I think it's also important probably as a key next stage is firms will need to demonstrate appropriate methods to trace customers and contact customers. So that'll be a key first stage of the process, really, to be able to determine how they're going to contact these customers. A couple of other tight timeframes as well in terms of how the delivery of the scheme is. Once they have opted in or declined to opt out, there's a 3-month window to be able to process the calculation and issue the redress to the customer, and payment made within 1 month from the final response letter. So those are the sort of details that we think are important out of what was issued. The other main point, I suppose, is I think we'd probably like to come on to is around those that have complained will also be prioritised in terms of receiving the redress, which could have some impacts on the plans.
Thanks, Mike. So okay, so I guess that's the industry view. One of the things that the industry needs to do. But what about the other stakeholders in this situation? Kind of the customers and even though I'm not sure they should be a stakeholder, they kind of are, the claims management companies. What do you think they're going to think about the announcement, and what are they going to do now?
So I think for CMCs, I think there is a clear theme and message from the FCA in the announcement that they're trying to divert people away from using CMCs and making the scheme as simple as possible so that customers are able to complete it themselves, opt in, and receive the redress without the use of a CMC. I think CMC behaviour is likely to follow the pattern of what it has been over the last 12 months, where they're picking up on other things such as affordability, maybe whether forbearance options were offered as part of collections, vulnerability, and those areas are outside the scope of the scheme, and so will need to be dealt with within the usual 8 weeks. I think the point for consumers is the priority being given to those that complain before the scheme starts. It's likely that we'll see a surge in complaints over the next couple of months with people wanting to get to the front of the queue. And so for businesses, being prepared for that, resourcing areas like telephony and other business areas that they're going to be getting inquiries on, and being able to triage those cases coming in is going to be important over the next couple of months.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the getting a decent IVR in place and diverting those customers who want to talk about and complain about this in the call centre is going to be a big part of any solution, and making sure that the resourcing is off to the side so that you don't struggle with your SLAs on your kind of business as usual stuff. Now, in the announcement the FCA made, they seem to say, look, it's a very simple calculation to determine the payouts. It's something that can be automated, which almost kind of got down the road of this will be a quick and easy thing to do. But in the next breath, they also called out the cost of remediation, excluding the redress, is estimated to be £2.8 billion. Doing some quick maths, that means that the average expected cost of running the redress scheme for the opt-in population of, I think it was 11.7 million at 85%. Is £240 per agreement. If this is straightforward as it's made out to be, why do you think there'd be a multi-billion-pound operational price tag to go with the redress scheme?
So I think completing a remediation program or redress scheme such as this always comes with significant operational costs. With I think the expectation to go back to 2007, that requirement to go and extract potentially archived data. There might be a need to be in contact with multiple brokers to try and identify agreements. Those processes are complicated, and in the majority will be quite manual in terms of trying to identify that data. I think the requirement, the opt-in processes and the need to trace customers, it's going to drive a significant customer contact requirement. So mailing, outbound engagement with customers, I mentioned earlier, it's going to drive inbound queries, relatively short timeframes to send out all of those mailings. It's quite a big spike in demand, and you're going to need to be able to resource that and deliver it accurately as well. Now, when it comes to things like making payments, there's a real need to complete appropriate KYC checks. Customers won't have been a customer of a certain firm for several years, potentially. Key customer identification points are out of date or incorrect. Those will need to be brought up to date to be able to ensure you're paying the right person and identifying the right person. Scenarios such as, whilst we believe that fundamentally this is likely to be an 80% what we're calling happy path process, where the use of a effective technology solution is the way forward to be able to deliver this accurately and most cost effectively. That's where it's able to automate customer correspondence, interpret responses, process payments, everything from start to finish, essentially. But there will be scenarios where customers are vulnerable, there's been collections and recovery activities, deceased parties, where there will need to be some human involvement to either put that back into the automated process, or it might be even more complex where they need experienced case handlers to be able to carry out the review of the case and work it cradle to grave, essentially. So all of those elements, despite it being, we believe the best solution is automation technology to be able to deliver the majority of it, there will be significant costs associated to it.
Well, thanks, Mike. So I want to put the question of preparedness now out to the audience. We've heard about what is now expected, but I know from conversations that we've been having, there will be some organisations out there that have already started the preparation for the redress scheme, and some are actually quite a long way down the line. So Diane, if we could put poll 2 up, and with this one, we've kind of called out a number of things that would relate to preparedness. And rather than kind of just tick one, if you could tick all that are applicable to your organisation and the stage in the process you're at, that would be great. And again, we'll give this a minute or so before we call for the answers. Right then, Dan, let's see what the answers are. A real interesting mix there. So some people kind of almost waiting on half of, in fact, of our respondees waiting on kind of getting clarity from the FCA before doing anything, and others then kind of progressing down that path of starting off with your data availability, making sure it's all there, defining your in-scope customer population, and then actually starting, or at least defining the kind of the tracing and customer contact strategy. Interesting, and it kind of aligns quite nicely to some of the conversations that we've been having as well. Mike, to help organisations that are just starting to define their processes, and for those who are well down the line to kind of validate they have all their bases covered, can you give us an overview of what the TCC Momenta Recordsure house view is on what needs to be done now ahead of the consultation conclusion, please?
Yeah, so I think the key, everything starts really with the data to be able to understand the customer population and who's in scope. So reviewing that data availability back to 2007, checking the agreements, potentially looking through, completing samples on some of those sales documents or sales practices, some of the contracts, to see whether adequate disclosure was in place, but also whether gathering the information on what interest rates were applied and what commissions were paid, and being able to have that data in a suitable format, that it can be placed into and identify the scope of the customers. Designing the approach to customer tracing and customer contact. So the tight timelines, as I mentioned, mean that that process is going to have to be up and running pretty much from when the scheme goes live, considering the 3-month window. So having that locked down in terms of, this is how we're going to identify a customer, this is how we're going to trace the customers, this will be our methodology, and designing the most efficient but also fair to customers in terms of that process. We would suggest having an idea around a system, or building a system, or sourcing a system that can automate the large majority of cases deemed in scope. It is a relatively straightforward process, as the FCA has tried to do, but having that automation capability, I think, is critical. Estimating the overall exposure based on the FCA's current description of what redress should look like, I think that's a requirement. And staffing up for the start of surging complaints. So we do anticipate increased volumes coming in the next couple of months, and carrying out that scenario planning and resource modeling to see that you're going to be able to deal with the volumes and be prepared for go live. And it was all very pleasing to see it. Reading the FCA's letter to firms broadly aligns to some of our recommendations about taking some of these steps now.
Well, and Mike, you're a kind of a bit of a resource expert. What type of resources are going to be needed for the redress scheme in general? Is it all kind of the kind of the conversation I've had with God, it's just a PPI complaints really? You've just got to manage a process. So is that the resource, and is there enough of that resource in the market for what is actually a whole sector redress scheme?
So I think there's probably a blend and probably a mixture, depending on the quality of the data and the customer base that each firm has. However, for cases following the happy path that are automated essentially cradle to grave and maybe just need some manual input at parts, I think that is a case handler, entry-level case handler, similar to some of the PPI handlers in previous years. And then there will be a need for slightly more complex cases, where you're going to need more experienced case handlers. And in terms of the demand for it, obviously this scheme is going live at the same time. All motor finance firms will be competing for the same resource, so there probably will be a drive to get those resources available as soon as possible.
Right, thanks for that, Mike. Let's have a look at if we've got any questions. So we've got one here, which is, why do you think a text solution is so important? Could we use a simple approach like spreadsheets? I guess probably one for you, Mike.
Yeah. So I think the main point around this is auditability.
It's easy for you to say, Mike.
And control and process management. So a lot of the firms that we talk to and that are involved in the scheme will have large books of customers, 50,000 and upwards, and trying to maintain control through a workflow tool is going to be critical. It allows you to report accurately on every stage of the process, track your customer base, but also has advanced capabilities such as extracting data from complaint letters, automating customer correspondence, picking out key elements to ensure that they're diverted to the right team. So if vulnerability is identified, that's not just going to carry on down the same journey and that's missed. Enable some payment verification processes through portals. So all of those elements we believe is the most suitable way to have control of the program and deliver it cost effectively.
Right, that's good. Hopefully that's answered the question. I think the answer, could you use spreadsheets? Yes. I don't think I'd want to. It sounds like there's far too many things that could go wrong if you wanted to use spreadsheets on that. Right, so I'm gonna try and summarise the key call-outs from today, and all the useful stuff that Mike has given us. So firstly, I think failing to prepare early will result in great difficulty hitting the FCA timelines. Which, given it's a whole industry scheme and they're talking about kind of 3 months to get first contact, 6 months if it's a kind of non-complainant at the start, and then 3 months to get payments out, and that just feels really tight for a very large industry, all trying to do things at the same time. There is going to be significant requirement for customer contact through the opt-in, opt-out processes and the need to trace the customer base. So you have to make sure you're kind of prepared and resourced up for that. You should expect a surge of new complaints that need to be dealt with promptly, given the consumer advice from Martin Lewis, and due to the prioritisation of those who complain before the scheme starts, and the SLAs on redressing them, there are going to be quite a lot of people who want to get into that queue now. And as Mike said, kind of utilising automation and kind of AI-powered technology is going to be essential to deliver accurate, fast, and cost-effective outcomes at scale. Resourcing. I'll go a bit further than Mike. I think resource is going to become scarce. I think certainly the higher level, more experienced resources, there's only so much in the market and everybody's going to want some of them. So securing your project teams to run the redress scheme, be that an internal project or via an external provider, is definitely the best way to ensure you don't miss out. And obviously the other thing with scarcity is price. Price will start to rise as the demand matches it. And then the letter to firm is clear that preparation must begin now and not wait for the scheme to start or the consultation to be finalised. There's definitely a danger of, if you wait until the end of November before you start, A, it will result in a huge amount of stress, and B, a lot of the things that you want to utilise will be utilised by other people. Now, here at TCC Group, we've been working towards this announcement for over 18 months, and we want to help. So whether it's specialist workflow technology that you want, some resources to provide capacity to handle what's certainly going to be more than your BAU team can manage, or a full tech-enabled project team to manage the redress project end-to-end, we've got all the bases covered. And as such, there are two offers that I want to make to this audience. Firstly, if you're thinking about doing this with spreadsheets, or if you're actively shopping for technology solutions, then you should definitely get a demo of our workflow solution. And secondly, the combination of regulatory consultants, experienced managed service operators, tech specialists, and a resource team with a pool of over 30,000 FTE to call from makes us the ideal partner to work with to help define and validate your plans. So we're also offering a free half-day workshop with our experts to get to the bottom of exactly what you need to do. There's a QR code in the corner there. If you, we will leave this on the screen for a little while. But we're absolutely kind of keen to get involved, and I'm sure there's lots of other organisations clamouring to have conversations with you. We really know what we're doing. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for your engagement in the polls and for coming on the webinar today, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.